Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled over a large and beautiful kingdom. He was a kind-hearted ruler who truly cared about his people. He often traveled through villages and towns to see how things were going. He worked tirelessly to keep his kingdom happy and prosperous. But there was one little problem. He got angry very easily. Even a small mistake could make him furious. Because of this, the servants and courtiers were always nervous around him. They were careful not to upset him in any way. They admired the king, but his sudden bursts of anger always made them uneasy. It felt like walking on thin ice. The king had a wise minister who understood him well. The minister always knew how to keep the king calm, using his gentle words and thoughtful advice. He helped the servants and courtiers know how to talk to the king without causing any problems. Because of the minister, everyone felt safer and relaxed. They knew he was there to help control the king's anger. One evening, in the hall of the royal palace, the king stood with clenched fists, his face red with anger.
"How could you lose the royal seal?"
he shouted at the courtier, who shifted nervously from foot to foot.
"That seal is essential for our agreements with the neighboring kingdom."
I beg your pardon, Your Majesty. I misplaced it while organizing the documents.
The courtier stammered.
"Misplaced it? This could ruin everything."
The king shouted. The minister stepped forward.
Your Majesty, we can search for the seal and create a temporary solution until it's found.
The king took a deep breath and said,
"You are right. Go and search for the seal and prepare a temporary agreement."
One day, the king sat in front of a dressing table, looking his reflection in the mirror. As he looked closely, something caught his eye. He turned to a nearby servant and said,
"Quickly, go and fetch him."
The servant quickly went out, but on the way, he realized that he had forgotten to ask whom the king wanted to be called. The servant's heart raced as he thought to himself,
Oh no, I didn't ask who the king wants. If I go back to ask him, he might get angry. I should ask the other servants. Maybe one of them knows who he means.
He reached the hallway and found two other servants talking.
Excuse me,
He said,
do either of you know who the king wants me to fetch?
The first servant shrugged and replied,
I have no idea.
The second servant shook his head and said,
I don't know either.
He asked many other servants if they knew whom the king had meant. But no one had any idea. Finally, one of the servants suggested,
You should go to the minister. Only he knows the mind of the king.
The servant rushed to the minister's house and found the minister kneeling beside the gardener. He was planting vegetable seeds in his kitchen garden. The gardener was carefully digging small holes in the soil, while the minister placed seeds inside them.
Make sure to space them out.
The minister instructed, glancing up.
If we plant them too close, they won't grow properly.
The gardener nodded.
Yes, sir. I will keep an eye on the spacing. We want the best carrots and beans this season.
The minister smiled.
And don't forget to water them regularly. A good harvest means we can share fresh vegetables with everyone and the neighbors.
The servant approached the minister and said,
Excuse me, sir. Do you know who the king wants me to bring?
The minister looked up, brushing dirt from his hands.
I'm not sure. Did he mention anything specific?
No. He just told me to fetch someone.
The servant replied nervously. The minister thought for a moment and asked,
What was the king doing when he sent for you?
He was looking at himself in the mirror.
Replied the servant.
He probably saw his hair in the mirror and wanted a haircut or a shave.
The minister thought to himself.
Very well. Then go and get a barber,
Said the minister. The minister had understood that the hair or beard of the king had grown. The servant hurried to the royal barber's shop and found him preparing his tools for the next royal visit.
Excuse me.
The servant said,
The king needs you at the palace right away.
The barber straightened up and replied,
Of course. I am ready to go.
Soon, they arrived at the palace, and the barber bowed low.
Your Majesty, I'm here to serve you.
He said. The king smiled and replied,
Thank you. I need a good shave and a haircut.
As the barber worked, he said,
You will look refreshed. Your Majesty. Everyone will admire your new look.
The king laughed.
I hope so. It's time for a change.
With that, the barber continued, carefully shaping the king's hair and beard. Meanwhile, the king remembered that he had not mentioned whom to call. Surprised, the king asked the servant,
How did you know that I wanted a barber?
I did not know, Your Majesty. It was the minister who helped me.
The servant replied. The king smiled, admiring how wisely the minister handled things.
He always knows exactly what to do.
The king said.
I must say, he is a clever man.
Moral: stay calm, think wisely, and problems will be solved.